This Watch Out for Fireball's Dispatch episode is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Head on over to check out what we have on offer, which includes full episodes of this show, Watch Out for Fireballs, once per month, as well as episodes of Abject Suffering, Adaptation Decay, Bonfireside Chat, a bunch of really cool content. Just for throwing us $1.25 a week. You get tons of stuff. So head on over. Again, that is patreon.com/DuckFeedTV. This is Gary Butterfield.
This is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireball's Dispatch, our monthly Q&A topics, response, anything goes episode.
The monthly WAF variety show. Oh, well. No.
Got little Jolson right there.
Yep.
Tiny Jolson, you got that Infinite sneaking in.
I did. I certainly didn't mean to go Jolson. I was more for like a vaudeville kind of thing.
Oh, name 3 vaudeville acts.
Let's see here. Amazon. Nope. No. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
No, it's not a good time, man.
Yeah.
Like they're not good. Yeah. It is a troublesome era.
Yeah.
For not great music.
Yeah. For just for lots of folks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Troublesome era for folks.
So the first WAF dispatch that we did last month, the response on that has been good. I'm happy that people seem to care for these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that people dig it because I like doing them.
Yeah. And
I'm going to enjoy doing this one. We're going to answer some questions. As for people listening to this on the public feed, the way you get to ask these questions is by being a patron.
Mm-hmm.
You go to patreon.com/DuckFeedTV. You can check that out. So we're going to answer some questions, and then we're going to talk about kind of a bigger subject, and then we're going to do a read your responses.
Yeah. So we're going to try and do, a bunch of these questions, but the same disclaimer as last time. If we don't get to yours, like there is a rolling list that carries all of them forward. Some of these questions will be holdovers from last month. And just the way it's going to go. If they pile up, we'll do we will do something special to clean house and reset things. Yeah.
But we'll get a bunch of the old ones.
Yeah.
On this go round, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and start us out here. This is one of the ones from last month. Eric asks, what are some non-widely reviled game tropes that you guys hate? For example, while playing Celeste, I realized that I have never ever had fun in high wind levels in platformers. For example, level 2 of Ninja Gaiden 2. But I don't think I've ever heard anyone complain about them the same way folk complain about, say, escort missions or water levels. So I'm taking this to be, what are your non-cliche pet peeves?
Ooh, it's really hard. It's really hard to not be cliche.
That's the trick. I decided to go for a challenge mode one because after this it'll be all smooth sailing.
Yeah, it'll be all downhill from here. In terms of effort, of course. So you picked this one. Did you have something in mind?
The thing I was going to say was kind of esoteric and kind of not a cop out, but like a little bit like it doesn't, it's hard for me to think of an exact example right now. I just know that we brought it up on shows, and I don't like it when characters say the theme of the game.
Yeah.
Out loud. I think that is pretty inexcusable and happens. Like, it's very hard for me to think of an example right now because even though we had these questions, I still feel a little bit on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that is, and it's ties in with this month with Bioshock Infinite with, the multiple times characters just say the themes that they're going for in that game. I think that requires more subtext. And, here's one too. I'll 2 for 1. So everyone's heard me complain about JRPGs constantly. One of the things that even the modern ones that are more complicated that I think is I don't hear a lot of people complaining about all that often is like hiding your complex systems behind hours and hours of gameplay.
Yeah.
So I don't like it when a new system is introduced 13 hours into a game that would have made the first 13 hours more enjoyable and interesting.
Yeah, it is absolutely just a real kind of waste of time, right? Like you could have if you were confident enough to build that system out and think about it, it probably could have been introduced in a small way and then expanded later on, right?
And I'm not a baby.
Yeah.
Like I can play a complicated game. Like I can, learn about I'd rather be thrown in the deep end and with tutorials and with reference stuff to read about. But I'd rather have that happen than just like I don't need 13 hours before I can be introduced to something.
No.
Like that. And that's obviously like that's what Final Fantasy 13 does, but it's also like I think about watching Will Hughes play Xenoblade.
Yeah.
And how you don't get the mechs until like hour 50 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it introduces a whole bunch of mechanics, and it's like you could argue there are other reasons to wait that long to do it, but at the same time it's just like, well, this sure looks like it would have been more fun with this stuff than without it.
Yes. So, yeah. So what was all this before that?
Yep. Give me your core gameplay initially.
Yeah. Man, this is really, really tough. From a story standpoint, I really don't like when there is obviously a character who was included to be a shortcut to make you care about them. See, like, oh, this is your little brother, or your little sister, or this is your just again, just like a shortcut, a shortcut for it. Like, as much as I like the game, Sherry is a little bit of that, and she's only saved by having such a relationship to the main plot. Right.
Sherry from Resident Evil 2.
Yes.
For people who don't just know who Sherry is.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. This is actually part of our sponsorship for the berries.
Yes.
The titular berries.
Yeah. Well, no, I was thinking...
Sherry's berries with Barry from Resident Evil. That's a Photoshop. Yay. This.
Yeah. It's like if you.
Oh my God, these are good. Yeah.
You were almost a Sherry sandwich.
Yeah,
I mean, like, with a chocolate wafer cookie and one of those berries in between it. Yeah. And yeah, no.
Tasty.
Yeah. So that's kind of the story, the story one for me. The second one is, I don't like it when a game just kind of like presents a bunch of quests to you when you walk into a town, and like it's just people with exclamation marks over them. That is something that WoW introduced. Just kind of like, oh, go over here and collect all these quests to go, possibly collect a bunch of other things. Like, and that is a real mainstay in
Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls in any kind of open world game. And I really, really prefer a more organic approach where you are going to like find them by walking into a trust me to walk into a building and talk to the most interesting looking person there. You know?
There's the games are like the Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 are pretty good about doing it well.
Mm-hmm.
I think for Bethesda, when I played Skyrim, like it's actually extremely insidious. It's they think that it is a feature for sure because they do. You get a quest and it's like, I'm clearing out all the side quests in this town. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I get a side quest that sends me to another town, and like literally 3 people run up to me to give me quests, and I'm just there to drop off a Daedric dildo or some bullshit, right?
Right.
Like I'm not there to I'm not staying, folks. My dad, I have very few memories of my dad, but one of them is whenever he would do like a turnabout in a driveway, he would always say, "Don't get out the coffee, folks. We're not staying."
Okay.
Like every single time he did it, and I want to be able to like hold when I'm holding down shift. It's don't bring out the coffee, folks. I'm not staying.
Yeah.
Like no one talk to me. I'm just here to complete a quest, and I will be back when I get to this town as I slowly, methodically clear the map.
Yeah. Give me a button for the Irish goodbye.
Yep, exactly. Like, or just like you should be able to have like a non-critical, like an invisibility you can only use for this.
Right.
Like, not for I can't sneak through a dungeon. All skeletons can see me, but all quest givers cannot. Invisible to quest giver mode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that stuff is extremely annoying.
Yeah.
So with you on that one.
Yeah. Here's a question from Bob Witz, again, about games. You guys don't seem to have a big problem with Souls-itis, the inability to enjoy normal games after being exposed to the Souls series. Can you talk about that a bit? I had a very hard time playing anything that wasn't Souls for years. though it has gotten much better since the crushing disappointment of The Ringed City.
I talked about Souls-itis in the first Dark Souls, and I was just like, how could I go back to God of War after an action game like this? And I've come off that quite a bit because I now think, having played a lot of Dark Souls and Souls-likes, and having played, since I'm still kind of struggling through Daughters of Ash, I can see how many hours I played Dark Souls, and it's like approaching 400 for Dark Souls 1. I now realize that as much as Dark Souls is really great, there are lots of things it just doesn't do. And I've come to peace with the idea that I play games for lots of different reasons. And, if I want to play a game and Dark Souls doesn't do that thing, I got to play a different game.
Yep. It's just there are lots of foods that I really enjoy, but some of them don't give me the vitamins that I need. You know,
or even if they do, like, even if it's a food you really like and it is nutritionally complete to you, like sometimes just variety, like it's fun to eat a pancake, and this will really vary and stuff. Like, this is not me saying it's interesting, because it's not about like difficulty at all, which I think a lot of people would feel that way about Souls, where it's like, oh, I just want something like I can turn my brain off. Right. I don't want that. I want to think in different ways. Like we're doing, we're like currently we were talking off mic, and we're doing this upcoming month Frostpunk for the show. That you have to think in that game, you think in a totally different way than you think in Dark Souls.
And no way is that an easy game either.
No, it's exceedingly difficult. Same thing with like, my love for vent crawlers. I restarted a Deus Ex run because there's a mod I wanted to try, like a revamp of it. And I'm like, I have to think during this game. I have to think in entirely different ways.
Yes.
I think it speaks to what I get out of Souls too, because a lot of people specifically on the Slack are very tied to Dark Souls and specifically Bloodborne because they are much more horny than I am for game feel. And that is just not very important to me.
Yeah.
Like, I like a wide variety of clunky, weird game avatar things. Like, somebody does not need to move smooth as butter or bust. Yeah. It's not hard for me to go from Bloodborne to Demon Souls.
Yeah.
Demon Souls, it's not hard for me to go from Bloodborne to Deus Ex.
Yeah.
In terms of movement. Like, I can just, that stuff's always there. It doesn't go away. I'm okay, well, I appreciate that while it's happening, and now I want to appreciate something else.
Yes. You answered you hit a lot of like the critical reasons. For me, just kind of like emotionally deciding, so being happy or being satisfied a lot of times is a decision that you make, and again, to go to a food metaphor, I swear I'm not hungry. I had lunch. It's fine. But no, like the best meal I ever had, A, I don't live in that city anymore, and B, you can't have it all the time. That doesn't mean there is no pleasure to be found in other foods. Just because something that you've played is the best, it cannot suck all of the color and flavor out of every other game because of that. Like, you just, you look for those different things.
At least for me, it can temporarily.
Oh yeah,
but it doesn't last.
Yeah, well, I mean, and if that's the case, then I just end up doing something else besides playing games for a while.
That's true too.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, just at a certain point, you actively decide to be happy and satisfied. Yeah.
And just start for me, like, and you decide to be satisfied, and you start examining, like, what are the things that I like doing in games? What are the things I liked before this came along that other games might be able to do? Yeah. Thank you, Bob. Andrew says, what are some games that you guys think have aged poorly and some that have aged well, specifically to story and mechanics over graphics? And he uses Deus Ex as an example of a game that has aged really well and has a lot to say about our present society, which I agree. And I chose this because I had since I
you had already brought that up. Yeah.
And because it is, I'm not using that necessarily as my answer, but it is a great, it does age really, really well, or has aged very well.
Yeah. So I'm still shocked. I know this was a while ago. I'm still shocked at how badly the original God of War aged for how, for how influential that game was. But I think that if I went and played stuff that was like a fast follow off of that, I would also think that had aged pretty bad. Like a game of that style, of like that hyper flashy button mash style character action game without like a platinum angle on it. I just that has shocked me at how poorly that is that is aged.
Yeah. That has I feel the same way about that game.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good real good answer for that. I generally like a lot of so another thing that I'll just say that has aged really poorly for me personally, and it's kind of heartbreaking because it's something I've been pushing for the show, but now I don't want to do it. Revisit, but I'm gonna try the sequel and see if it improves it. Is Freedom Force? Since I've had Irrational on the brain and just like remembering like, oh, Irrational used to make games that were not Bioshock Infinite.
Yeah.
And that is a game that has so much personality and is so good, but is another one of the many, many games that sacrifices itself on the altar of difficulty. Like it doesn't really know how to scale up the experience without just pumping numbers up to where the end is like a serious slog.
Yeah.
In a way that is extremely unfashionable. And it's interesting because as I was playing it, the first part of it, this is kind of an answer for both because like the first third of it has aged really well in how like idiosyncratic it is to modern games.
Yeah.
Like it has, that company that did Bioshock and people who worked on Thief and the like, it has these sim elements where every element and every creature in the game, every enemy is beholden to the same rules that the player is and the player heroes are. And it gives you this very robust character maker that you can use to just apply this really, really wild tool set to a character. And it's really, really neat. It has that sim feeling. And I'm like, this feels very forward looking and cool. And then at the end, it is here are like tons and tons of robots that are resistant to everything except for one or two specific abilities. And most of the missions are just fight a bunch of them. And it's like, boy, like that sucks, dog. Like that is shitty. Like this game is too long. Like in a modern context, it would be like an 8-hour game, perhaps. And it would just go by a lot breezier and be a little bit less like harsh and hateful.
Yeah.
So I still want to, once I finish it, I'm going to check out the sequel and see if the sequel would make a good waft because there is a lot of the cool stuff about these is really fucking neat.
Yeah.
The uncool stuff has aged horribly. And it was totally surprising to me. I didn't recognize it or realize it the first time I played it.
Yeah. I don't know that I have an answer off the top of my head about like what has aged super well. You know what? Here's what I'll say. Peripheral based music games. I recently pulled out Rock Band, and for as fad like as those are, still incredibly satisfying to play.
Yeah. That's kind of foolproof. Like that will never get bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see. I don't know if we're going to have too much of an answer for this one, but I'm curious about it.
We can kind of seed the lightning round questions in the main round, rather than do a lightning round.
Yeah. Daniel Mesa asks, when I first played Lionhead's Black and White, I didn't have a pet. Now that I do, I think that the Lionhead guys must be sociopaths. What do you think of that game? Why does it let you beat your creature until it's black and blue?
I watched Derek play that a little bit. I've never played it myself. And I don't have strong opinions about it.
Yeah. I played it. I did like a couple of the maps and what have you, and like a lot of Lionhead stuff. It feels like a tech demo in search of something fun to do in it. But yeah, it's fucking gross to hit an animal. So like that was not something that I especially thought about back then, but like, yeah, it's kind of the only way you can discipline them. Like your avatar or whatever, when they do something bad. And aside from just being cruel, and inhumane, it's also wrong. Because that's not how you motivate an animal. That's how you make an animal hate you. So,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No good.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no strong good opinions, and I don't like hitting animals.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to seek it out.
No.
Yeah.
Also, I think that's one of those games that's just kind of impossible to play now.
Yeah, I don't think it's around.
Yeah.
My Marvelous Year, so Zach, asks us, follow up on last month's question about roguelikes for Watch Out for Fireballs. Are there other genres that you feel are not represented on the show that you would like to dip your toes into?
Sports.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do another sports game. Pyre gave it to me. Pyre gave me the hunger.
I do not. I hated the sports Empire, and I don't like sports games, and I don't like modern sports games.
Okay.
Not to do a live veto. I'm just like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to do weird sports games.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't want to.
I would like to do a weird sports game.
Like a football game.
No, I don't want to do a football game. But like,
yeah, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
I want to do like Mario Tennis or something.
Yeah, that's what
that would be fine.
Yeah.
I think that we have still never done a proper racing game.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of a sport, but I think that would be a good one. Mm-hmm. And then also we're doing some more of the stuff this year, but strategy is something that we haven't done very much of, and I'm very hungry for currently, and I think is going to be, good to do more of.
Yeah. I think that by making the first strategy game we covered Sacrifice, we set back the strategy on WoF movement by several years.
Yeah.
Yep. Sacrifice.
So strategy is my answer, but we're doing that. So strategies and roguelikes, I want to get some of that stuff covered on the network. Mm-hmm. Racing and sports games, provided they have Mario in the title, pretty much.
Right. Yeah.
So
you talked about like that baseball game.
Super Baseball 2020 would be funny. It would be fun. Like an old like baseball game or something like that. I just don't want to like try to wade into Madden 2018.
No, but
or like a modern, I just don't know what I would do with a modern sports game.
Yeah, like if we did a WoF mini about NBA Jam, I think that'd be fun.
That'd be okay.
Yeah.
Even though, like, I don't know, like I feel like I kind of got my NBA Jams out during Pyre too. Like that game's okay.
Yeah. So this is one I can answer real quick just because there's a simple answer for it. Eric asks, is Radio Free Midworld ever coming back? That show was one of the reasons I became a patron, and I'd love to see the remaining books get the Duckfeed treatment. I'm just having trouble getting guests. That is something where it was my mistake at the beginning of the show to like not have a regular cast, just like a regular co-host for it, and seeking people out, and finding people who have read 6 or 7 books and have microphones to come on, exceedingly rare. So working on that. The show is not dead. It's just on hiatus while I try and get it together. Yep.
I'll do another quick one too.
Yep.
Just because I think that we're on the same page and it's a quick answer. Moonborn says, are there any Abject Suffering games that you wish you had done as a WoF, and vice versa? And we just kind of like, they're not mutually exclusive. And so kind of know, like, if we run into an Abject Suffering that would make a good WoF, we've shunted things from that. We've had like requests and been like, we'll probably actually do this down the road. Watch out for fireballs. We're not going to do it on Abject Suffering now. Or we just play the whole thing and end up doing something like Contradiction, which the watch out for fireballs on Contradiction would not be better or more meaningful than the Abject Suffering on it.
Yes. See also Bad Mojo.
Yeah, Bad Mojo is another one. And then the vice versa, if there are games on WoF we'd rather have done for Abject Suffering, I don't think so, because a bad, like a ornery WoF or a miserable game experience does not make a bad Watch Out for Fireballs, at least in our opinion.
Right.
And at least, to people who listen, who like those episodes that are kind of cranky. So like the reason to move it to Abject Suffering would be to kind of take it less seriously. But I think we make a lot of hay out of out of taking it seriously and actually looking at how it is.
Yeah. And specifically by doing a WoF on something, we play the entire thing. So when I think of games that we spend the majority of the time dunking on, see Soul Reaver, see Shadow of Memories or Shadow of Destiny, whatever it is called in your region, like you won't get to the part of that is that is juicy. You won't get to that sweet nut meat inside in just the half hour that we would give it,
Yeah.
So it kind of necessitates the WoF approach, even if the game is Abject Suffering quality, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, let's see here. This is just kind of a general life question. What were you guys like in high school? What embarrassing/edgy things were you into?
It is hard for me to answer that question. I don't really have a good answer.
Yeah.
For that, I had friends, drank a lot of coffee, like did not do a lot of drugs, played a lot of video games, was in a band. Not a whole lot of embarrassing, edgy things I was into. I was not like an edge kid. Like I like to think that, there are things that I was not into that end up being bad fits, but nothing that I find particularly embarrassing right now.
Yeah. I was real similar in high school to how I am now. I was, involved in things like choir and theater and academic challenge, stuff like that. The only like edgy thing that I did, or like thing that is like, oh yeah, that's a little bit aesthetically icky, is so what I did was I took silver Sharpies and all of my binders for different classes. Like I just wrote out lyrics or embarrassing like Fight Club quotes on them, just like just in really tight scrawled letters, I thought that that's something about me and society.
I definitely did a little bit of like that kind of stuff too. I think writing out lyrics is just kind of like something kids just do.
Yeah.
And stuff. I used to do it on folders, and you could erase the front of it.
Oh yeah.
If you erased hard enough, you could actually like make a reverse, like erase the front of a folder.
Oh yeah.
And that was a big thing in my school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing too embarrassing. I painted my nails a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying out stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it.
Yeah. Mild level prankery, and just in general, like, we were in high school pretty much right after the Xbox came out. So like playing Halo was our big like social thing. Like we would get together like at my house in the basement and set up 4 Xboxes and, play games and probably say shitty things about women. I don't know.
Yeah, probably nothing great.
Yeah. Probably.
Like the interesting thing about the age difference between us is that like the kind of multiplayer Nintendo 64 Xbox boom was before I was came after I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So like in high school it was PlayStation. I guess like I didn't know anyone in the Nintendo 64. I guess that was still going on. But video games were not a social thing to me in high school at all. It was a solitary pursuit on weekends. And then during the week, I would do band practice. I would watch Simpsons with friends like every day. We played at like 5 and 5:30 on Fox. And then we would like go out during the summers or on weekend nights, go to a coffee shop and play cards.
Okay.
And that was kind of our thing. Video games did not become a social thing to me until after high school.
Yeah.
And even then, like I like couch co-op. I have fun with couch co-op, but it's not this kind of thing that I speak of in like hushed tones.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people I know where they're just like, man, bring back those days. Like, I'm okay. Like games are largely a solitary pursuit to me, and I'm good with that.
And then, like there's bunches of that still. Like Nintendo has kind of never stopped doing that. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. I guess I know it's still possible, but it is a weird thing that people still also treat as a bygone era.
Yeah.
And I think because I didn't do very much of that. Mm-hmm. I mean, like earlier in that middle school, I played, Super Nintendo. We played a lot of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and Mario Kart multiplayer as a kid. But it's not. I've always just been, video games are a me thing.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
And like weirdly, the video games were not necessarily the primary focus of those gatherings as well.
Yeah.
Just like, partway through high school, again, dating myself for putting a pin on the timeline, we switched from Halo to playing Texas Hold'em because that was what was on TV, and it was a fun thing to do, to sit around and talk. And wager a little bit of money. Like it just switched over like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here, this is an interesting question. Kind of hitting these ones from last month just so we don't get too far behind, but we'll do some more from this month as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what is your opinion on the concept of an inherent good or evil within a fantasy setting? Do you find this comforting? Does it hamstring your storytelling options? Does it turn tabletop RPGs into a fucking slog when the paladin wants to murder orc children? And I think we can extend that past tabletop RPGs.
Yeah.
Into the idea of fantasy in general. And this is interesting. I like picking out questions or topics or things that apply to this month's game. And this reminds me of that thing in Pyre where it's like all saps are conniving schemers. That kind of fantasy racism where you can apply a moral, a character trait with a moral weight to a race, or to a type of person.
Yeah.
Which also plays into Infinite because that's what happened in that. So. Right. This seems germane.
Yeah. I don't like that in a fantasy setting. I think that it makes it small and predictable. And additionally, even if you say like, oh yes, then it exists to be subverted, what you get is things that are equally as cliche as the straight example. where you have the paladin who murders murders orcs. You also get the orc who's actually a good guy, or the human who who is religious or whatever, aligned with the good, but is doing evil, is doing evil and bad things. Like, those are shortcuts to nuance. Like, what if bad thing was good and what if good thing was bad? And what if they were the same? You idiot, you absolute moron. Yeah, it just it's shorthand. It feels lazy to me.
Yeah, it's such a it's been done so long. It's such an old trope that even some versions of it are the trope.
Yes,
so it is kind of not a very interesting place to play in anymore. And like, mechanically, it can serve some purposes because you end up having those tags on spells and items and stuff. Like, it doesn't bother me in Baldur's Gate when I get a sword that does extra damage to an evil creature. Like, within the context of a game like that, where there's kind of like less expression. Like, you play as a character in that game, there are a couple of moral choices, but you're pretty much choosing to be good or a shit heel in that game. And it would bother me more in a more modern game that I would want to have a little bit more nuance to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Like at the table, when we play tabletop games, we very rarely like truck with alignment.
Yeah.
Like, characters will choose that if we're playing a game that has it, but it doesn't have effect and we don't pay very much attention to it.
Yeah.
Characters kind of just like land at a morality that makes sense for them. And it's pretty, when things have to cite those things, like if a mechanic cites it, we use specific actions that we recall. Like this thing, and this is just an example, it's not direct, but it's like, this does 10 damage to evil creatures, and then the DM will be like, yeah, like earlier you torture that guy for information. That's pretty evil, this will hurt you. We just use specific things rather than using something on the character sheet. And I think that's something that is a lot of morality systems actually kind of try to abstract. Like with like Blank will remember that, or with reputation systems in New Vegas or Fallout 3. They're kind of abstracting your actions to a like the grand totality of your actions into an alignment rather than going backwards.
Yes.
Which is part of the problem with like a lot of fantasy settings. Like, I am good, therefore the things I'm contextualized I do are good or justified, versus I did these things, therefore I am shitty or good.
Yeah. And I'm going to kind of like dovetail this into Ben Sapatka's question, which is there any game that you think has perfected the mechanic of a morality system? And it is stuff like that. It is stuff like The Witcher 3, where it is more about understanding kind of the social mechanics of the world, or dealing with imperfect information, or New Vegas, where it is factional, or
action based.
Yeah.
Like in Witcher 3, it is purely like you did a thing and it is a concrete thing you can point to, and thus this concrete thing happens. And like, the average person might agree, like, that first thing you did was bad, therefore this thing that happens is bad, like bad in a moral sense. But the game never uses those labels, for it. It's just like, you did X, so Y happened.
Yeah. And I think that especially in RPGs, if they give you, if you are given a meter or a number, the inclination is to maximize it. Like, this is an area where Mass Effect falls down, because it is all about, like, are you a renegade or are you a paragon? And there are distinct things that will or will not happen depending on how far you go down one of those roads. So like, it is less about being situationally aware and more about kind of consistently applying the same philosophy, which just kind of takes the nuance out of that. Even if like what renegade and paragon mean are not strictly good or evil, right? Like even even if the individual choices and results are interesting, it is still playing into a meta, like into a meta system. Where you're still trying to max out a meter, which sucks.
Yeah, that stuff bums me out about and I this actually will dovetail. We're doing a domino thing, because this dovetails into Thomas Gray's question about just kind of what we think about Mass Effect, right? And like, that is, I recently did a thing where I was like going through my Steam games and looking at how long I'd played ones that I've played. Like, what have I not tried and what did I give up on? And it's interesting to see like the actual number of hours for that stuff. And I was like, I always said like, oh, I played Mass Effect for 10 hours. I played for 9 hours actually. And that wasn't the thing that turned me off of it when I played it. But I do think kind of like in terms of a design or an approach to morality, that is a bummer to reduce it down to a meter. And it's a real bummer in terms of BioWare's history, which is to take a conversation tree and just round it down to you say something neutral, good or bad.
Right.
And I've been thinking a lot recently about like rounding off rough edges on things, probably because I'm playing Diablo 3, and how that's not always a good thing. And it can be very frustrating to just be like, let's get rid of all the nuance of this.
Right.
And when that's applied to a morality system or a dialogue system, like that can get like kind of generally sort of gross. The idea of operating a character because you want to, it becomes that alignment first thing that Jordan's talking about. Like, I want to do a Renegade playthrough. So I'm going to choose Renegade options rather than I'm going to choose options that feel right in the moment or that are true to the character I'm envisioning.
Yeah.
And that ends up being called a Renegade later.
It's like you're solving for the end result as opposed to solving for what is your judgment in the situation. Right.
Yeah.
And the best things, see The Witcher, see Alpha Protocol even, are about judging in the situation.
Judging the situation and having situations not, it's such a limiting bounding box. Like if any way I can reply to any situation in the grand totality of your game is something that can conform to a neutral path, a renegade path, or like I'll take Mass Effect off the thing because it's so like Fallout 4.
Right.
If anything I can do in that game is, yes, no, sarcastic, and the fourth one I can't remember. Like, if you boil down a response to that, you're not really like doing any role playing at that point. You are just like you're playing audio surf, but with morality. You're just switching between three different lanes of thing to try to, and that's just like very limiting in how you can envision the character and what kinds of situations can even be prevented to the character. Like if you have to be able to reply to them in one of those three ways, that's a limit to the kinds of situations you can even have. And I know that Mass Effect does more nuanced things with like choices that are outside of that system, right? Like I got long enough to choose the genocide or whatever for the evil bugs. Like in the game, I played long enough for that. So I understand it's not literally all that.
Right.
But Mass Effect is on a continuum that is eventually turning to that.
Yes.
So
more to the question about the Mass Effect series, I played them and I love them. Like, I was even into Mass Effect 3 and its original ending. I did not feel poorly served by that because Mass Effect 3 is one big ending. is the thing, right? Like the payoffs for the choices that you're getting are in the endings of the individual stories that you are doing as the entire solar system and galaxy is burning down. And I think that's super interesting and good, and it is a satisfying tone for them to take. Mass Effect 2 is still the strongest because it is a series of really good hour-long episodes of a sci-fi television show with interesting characters and, what I think is fun combat, more fun than in 3, that leans more heavily on the powers and more on kind of the squad aspect, of the approach. Like the combat in those games is good and fun, and 2. Like that fulfills the promise of the series in a satisfying way. Over time, though, when I have played things like Alpha Protocol or The Witcher 3, those are games that have taken and done that stuff, just to my mind, so much better that I'm a little bit afraid to go back because the stuff that I love, again, about Alpha Protocol and The Witcher 3 are things that I just know that Mass Effect 2 does not do well, even though I love the characters and the stories that unfold through it, right?
And you can just play for those things, too.
Yeah.
Like, the show will not retire without us covering a Mass Effect.
Right.
For sure. Like, I want to check them out. Like, it took me 3 run-ups to play Dragon Age. Like, I could eventually play Mass Effect 1 and dig it.
Yeah.
It can totally happen where I just need to adjust my expectations and look at what it will do well rather than, I'm going to play this because I want these characters and because I want these situations, not go into it wanting to have this BioWare style role-playing experience, which it's, not going to be, at least on the micro level, even if it is on the macro level with deciding, whether you genocide the bugs. And also just there's like an element to that series for me where it is that like season 3 of this gets good.
Yeah.
For me, because the first 9 hours of that, the things that turned me off, and I can only speak to those first 9 hours, is the sci-fi-ness meant that I had no map for whatever anything was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. I can't remember the class names right now because it's been a long time since I played it, but they don't feel as a word, they're not meaningfully distinctive. It's just like a noun.
Yeah.
So I just have to remember that, like, this is this kind of semi-wizard versus this is this some kind of maybe sort of a wizard. And that extended to like shotguns where it's like I get the Vindicator and the Annihilator, and I don't know which one of those is better. And then the real thing that turned me off of it initially, was that it feels like you're GW Bush versus the Space UN. In it. It's very human supremacist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like all the different races are coming together to do something, and you're like, fuck this, humanity rules. And you go off and do a thing. And I understand it gets subverted in 2.
Yeah.
That's just a lot of season to watch to get something subverted.
Yep. No.
It's very, watch the first couple seasons of Dexter are bad.
Yeah.
It's very that.
Yeah. And that is something that I'm really hesitant to go back to because I don't know, like, yes, you can have a piece of media that is about that time in history, but also we have not really reckoned with the Iraq War or the George W. Bush presidency really at all. So going back to it, I think it would just be a lot of it would still be dismal to me in a way that reminds me of just how broken and fucked everything is.
Be very interesting to just kind of look at it politically.
Yeah.
As how that is. Like, I think that like that happens with for the zine, I just watched the 1994 Judge Dredd.
Yep.
And I cannot get 2018, 2019, 2016 out of my brain for anything.
Right.
To watch something like the theme of this seems to be like be totalitarian, but not that totalitarian. Like, it's a very weird fucking movie and stuff. And I just wonder, like, with 2019 eyes, like playing Mass Effect 1, it's like if when I first played that, which I don't remember what year it was, if it like roiled against me to be GW Bush, now that we are so shitty in the world theater, how much worse would that feel for me to play a character who's like standing in front of the rest of the world telling them to fuck off?
Right. Because
we know what's right. Like, that Independence Day rah-rah stuff was never going to age super well, I feel like.
Yeah.
So
I mean, can it age really well if it's a stance or a feeling that I never ever had in the first place?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
It was never something that I really felt or believed.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it is. It's a tricky question.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I forget whose question that was even.
I think I segued us into Mass Effect. I think this might be you.
Yes. So this may be me. We're going to finish out with this one. This is Jake Fortier who says, 1, Grant Morrison, 2, with the recent success of Resident Evil 2 remake, what games would you like to see remade from the ground up? Also, what features would you like to see in said remake?
Yeah. Grant Morrison is good.
Yep. I've not read anything by him I disliked.
You should read The Nameless.
Oh.
That is a standalone, I think 4-issue sci-fi thing, and it is him getting out of the DC playground and going back to like trippy sci-fi, like really, really heady, witchy sci-fi horror. It's really good, and it goes down smooth.
It is in my cart right now.
Nameless is good.
Yeah.
It was really nice so Grant Morrison is somebody who I love, but he has lost me for a while because he has exclusively just been doing DC. Like, I'm not going to read a Batman comic.
Yep.
Like, I understand Grant Morrison Batman is supposed to be good, but it's many, many issues. Like, I can't see myself get into it. And then he does those big event things. And I think he just likes the gee whiz likeness of the characters. Like, I'm doing all these Jack Kirby New Gods stuff, and I'm like, I just can't care. Sorry, like, go back to being independent, or like, I liked him on X-Men. I don't think that's going to happen again. But I can't do mainstream DC stuff. It's not interesting to me.
Right. Yeah. I loved The Filth. I was really happy when we covered that because it's not something I would have ever found on my own. We covered that for Try This, so people are like, where was that?
Which, if you're a patron, you now have access to.
Yes, you do.
It's in the Fire Hose.
The Fire Hose.
Fire Hose.
Yeah. And I, read that. Man, I mainlined his run on New X-Men. Yeah, I am in favor. I am a well wisher in that I wish him no particular harm. It's just that I don't really read that much in terms of comics anymore, so it's not something I seek out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
I understand. I haven't read a new thing for a while.
Yeah.
Like I've been kind of just poking at comics for a little bit. I haven't let my Marvel Unlimited subscription subside because I keep thinking I'm gonna go do a deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kind of haven't.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Grant Morrison is good.
Yep, my comic reading has been like, just yearly a Junji Ito collection comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And just looking for Megmog and Owl collections. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Number 2, the Resident Evil remake question. What other game would you like to see remade from the ground up? I don't know. I just
Resident Evil 3.
There we go. Just keep on going, guys.
Yeah. Yep.
I really don't think that's necessary, but we'll see. They're gonna do it, so thumbs up, I suppose.
I think talking about that more. You chatted about that before. You alluded to it. Why do you think that is a bad idea?
I don't know that it's a bad idea. It's just that in the RE2 remake, they kind of brought in the things that I thought were kind of essential from RE3, which were the Nemesis character, Pursuit in Mr. X. Mr. X is sublime in RE2. And I think that just kind of the mechanical polish that RE3 brought in, is made unnecessary by the new engine. It is inherently actiony the way that it is. Additionally, like they have like the ammo mixing and stuff. So like the big mechanical things, it doesn't feel like it would be as meaningful. Now, the chance to spend more time in Raccoon City, cool. Yeah, like I'd be down for that. Especially because you spend so little time on the streets in the RE2
that's
remake.
The thing, right?
Yeah.
Like in the RE2, like it would be fun to experience those different areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if like a new take on those so like I love Mr. X in RE2.
Yeah.
I think that having it be a choice between having it be Mr. X, but having it be a thing you could fight, but being very difficult might be pretty neat.
Yeah.
Like I like that you can't fight him in 2, but seeing how, and also adding a dodge.
Yeah.
Like, so adding a little bit more skill-based play and stuff, like I would be pretty into it actually.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to necessarily, I would want them to greatly minimize the amount of time you spend back in the station.
Yeah.
Which is already not a big part of RE3, but I would want that to be very, very minimized.
Yeah, yeah.
And kind of add in some new stuff. But I think it would be neat. I think that going up through those, and especially like this is actually like RE3 was my joke answer. My real answer, which is also kind of a cop out, is Code Veronica.
Yep.
Because that game is not very good, does not stand up very well, and is like the story and plot stuff that happens in it is cool, and I would love to see a modern take on it.
Yes.
So.
I agree. Yeah, I think that is a good answer to see them take another run up at it. Like, you're on the prison island, and then you're on, and then you're in Antarctica, and you do it. The two characters, in sequence like that. Yeah, I could see that being good. They're just like they've got that momentum. Like Ari's back, baby. Like
I love it.
Like people want it and they're hungry for it, and there's never been a better time to be alive.
In a weird way, like Capcom is back.
Yes.
For me, like it's pretty awesome to like be excited about this, like a developer, like a mainstream developer again.
Yeah.
Like that. Another thing I'll throw out there is this, and the like future, like definitely future WAF candidate, Dark Messiah of Might and Magic.
Oh yeah.
Could use a update the same way like maybe like Prey updated Prey. In a way like a spiritual successor that uses some of the same things and does things with the primary movement mechanic of Dark Messiah, which is arrows with ropes attached to them, and did more with that.
Yeah.
Because that is very neat in that game. It's super cool. But I would love to see an update of that.
Yeah.
Because there is some jank, and the story of that game, like it would have to be a remake that subverted the sexy succubus that lives inside your head in that game, which is probably the biggest bummer about it. So
yeah, that's a good answer. To continue being a parody of myself, the original Silent Hill. I know that's not going to be a thing.
Didn't they get a remake?
So it got a remake, but it's so different. It is fundamentally a different game just because it is entirely pursuit based, and even though it hits a lot of the same kind of it hits echoes of the main story, but it is entirely off in its own kind of corner. What I would like is a mechanically updated version where it is kind of the weird semi-open world of Silent Hill. you are playing as Harry going through and seeing the story of Alessa in a way that does not look as bad as the original one does, and just kind of plays better. I would like to see that story told again in a good, more satisfying way.
Yeah, I replayed before we did Silent Hill 3. I played Silent Hill 1 and agree. Like I ended up enjoying it. Like it's very atmospheric. It has a lot to recommend it. It is not fun,
right?
At any point, I would like, as the survival horror game with melee combat of that era, like it should at least be satisfying to hit something with a 2x4.
Yeah,
and even if you're not encouraged to do it,
yeah.
So I would appreciate that.
Yep.
So that's what we're going to do for this episode. As far as big questions, if we didn't get to your question, we apologize. We will definitely get to the questions from last month. We didn't get to next month. We won't let something go 2 months without getting on. And if your question didn't get asked, it'll get asked. It didn't get answered. It'll get answered next episode. And then we're not going to make a habit of this, but I'm not going to make a habit of this. I did this bad thing. I pushed a topic to the top of this because it's really germane to the games we did this month, and there was a good discussion about it in the Slack.
Yeah.
And so that subject is violence in games.
Yes. Perennial topic, as old as the hills. Remember when that was our primary kind of like political concern with games, was they're going to come take them away. That mean old Lieberman and Hillary Clinton. Clinton was really huge on the hot coffee kind of tip.
She hated that coffee.
Yeah, she hated it. Just
and
like,
now she dabs her ways to the polls.
She Pokemon. Yeah, no, sorry, I got bummed out. I got bummed out, and I can't do it again.
The next 20 minutes, Cole. The next 20 months are going to be hell.
I just can I just be put into a medically induced coma, please?
Wait, mate. It is. It's going to be hell.
Yes.
But yeah, so that we're not going to talk about that so much because that has been roundly disproven. Like I think it is a thing where like I don't think you can totally discount the idea that maybe if somebody is constantly exposed to violent media, it might have an effect.
Yeah.
I think you can, and science has discounted the idea that like it makes people violent.
Right. There is such a I don't know, like there is such a wide gradient between in somebody's relationship to violence that the decision to actually enact it, that has to be more profound than just media experience, while still allowing for the fact that media can have, an impact on people's lives. Yeah,
for sure. And it's also something where it's like in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Like it's like if you just taught this person violent video games, they might be violent, but no one's saying, hey, this is fake, or no one's showing them, other stuff at the same time or anything like that. Like, I just feel like that's bad parenting.
Yeah.
More than anything that's doing that.
Yeah. The discussion that I'm kind of more up for having is, kind of the distinction between aesthetic violence and then just kind of violence as the staple mechanic that we have settled on. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and just kind of good versus bad uses of it. Things like that. Like, when is it gratuitous? When it is not? Like, when are good reasons to use it? And specifically for me, like the thing that I think about, about this is I get irritated, and this is a thing where I'm getting irritated about other people just doing things that have nothing to do with me, and that's a bad habit. I feel like everyone does that. I should not do it. I should work on not doing it, but just getting irritated about discourse, that I can just safely ignore, is I get frustrated when people bemoan violence in games and like period.
Yeah.
Like there's like this, I think that there is a posture that happens where it's like, there are not, like a game will come out and it'll be nonviolent, and maybe it will be a mediocre game, but it's kind of championed for being nonviolent, and people are like, where are all the nonviolent games? And I'm like, and I just feel like, oh, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, actually, like we have a lot of nonviolent games. Like it is still probably by volume, the defining verb of video games, right, is to harm. But the pie is so big right now, and indie games and kind of just even mainstream gaming is so huge right now that you can choose your flavor of this. Like if you want to play exclusively nonviolent games, you can do so now.
Yes.
and no one is stopping you. If you exclusively want to play, if your line is, I don't want to hurt a person, like I just want to fight monsters and demons, you can do that.
Yeah.
If your line is that you don't show any graphic violence, it's just like a little particle effect and the person lays down, you can do that.
Yeah.
Like wherever your line is, you can play video games for the rest of your life with games that exist right now and probably be okay with that thing. So as a perspective of like coming out swinging against violence in games, I feel like that's just like not nuanced and kind of like missing the point and kind of pointless.
Yeah.
At the same time, like it's like missing. It's not giving credit for the scope of the medium, which still has a long way to go, but is very, very wide, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And is kind of just a non-starter as a point.
So I feel like it is, one of these well-beaten paths. It is a shortcut in a discourse toward criticizing AAA games or criticizing the games that get a lot of attention, right? Which is like you will always have something to talk about. You will always have something to write. You'll always have a struggle on you if what you want to do is say that big games that have a lot of money and budget behind them are shallow for reason X, Y, or Z, because generally those are going to be violent things, notwithstanding the incredible popularity of The Sims, etc. down the line. I think that it is a shortcut, or it is a little bit of a it is like a transcription error. Like when you're upset about one thing, you will attribute it to another, and an attribution error. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah. There's something wrong with my heart, but my arm is hurting. Right.
Yep. Blaming Coke because soda is bad for you.
Right.
And it's more granular than that, but it's a version of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you are mad at, I feel like people who are making that complaint are upset about they're doing a version of the same thing I'm doing when I'm getting irritated at them seeing the complaint all the time on my timeline.
Guys, talk about what I want to talk about.
I'm doing the same thing. So I get that, but that's what they're doing. It's just like, I want these games to be the thing that I want to do, but it's such a reductive, just boiling it down to violence feels very reductive to me.
Yes.
As a thing.
Yeah.
And that's that was the big bugbear I had about this, is that I'm sick, just kind of, sick of, not in a way like, the rebuttal field, like put 20 minutes on the clock, but more just kind of in a gentle kvetch way of seeing on my timeline, like people who I otherwise, generally think are pretty good, just being like, pulling out this very tired, like just, this is inherently bad without examining it.
Yeah.
Anymore. Like, I think it just has to be kind of examined and brought up in context. Something that makes me think about it is it's so tied to genre.
Yeah.
What people are really complaining about is genre.
Yeah. I'm tired of playing shooters, or I'm tired of playing games where I click on something and it goes away, or I'm tired of pressing a button at the right time when something is near me to make it go away. Like, if you boil it down to wireframe, like, is that what you're upset about? Or
like, so that flavor of genre in terms of mechanical, but even genre in terms of like story and setting and stuff too. Like if you are playing a horror sci-fi game, like it is very likely that is going to be about physical harm or physical danger.
Yeah.
So like you look at something like Alien Isolation, like that is a violent game.
Oh yeah.
Like, yes, you can't fight back, but when you die, it is,
Yeah. Oh, and you see the evidence of violence everywhere.
Yeah. And that's because part of that is the genre. Like that's the genre that the game got made in. So like, if you're complaining about that, if you're saying like, we need fewer games about, fewer action sci-fi games, that's a more reasoned complaint, I feel like.
Yeah. Or it's more precise anyway.
More precise. Yeah. Like, that's what I mean. Like, I don't want less action sci-fi games. Like, I feel like the pie is big enough for all, but it at the very least is more precise. I think that might be what people are getting at.
Yeah.
When they talk about, like swords and sorcery kind of, fantasy game. That's a very popular genre. Yeah. And it's like, part of that genre is walking around hitting people with a sword. And like the idea, like, oh, why can't it be about making friends and building bridges? And I'm like, well, that's a different genre. Yeah. Like in a lot of, like, that's not a marker of that. That is like, what we run into with that is like, I got like that happens in children's media. I'm not trying to be reductive with that or like dismissive, but like happens in like children's movies.
Like you have like Castle. You have that, like that game is called Fantasy Life on the DS.
Yep. Yeah. That is the version of that. And Fantasy Life does not map onto another kind of fiction very well, other than like Eureka's Castle or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people are just not tending to, or like the other way, nonviolent media kind of can be in other mediums, are like prestige dramas that have no violence to them. But like, what would the Good Place video game look like? Or something like that, or prestige comedies. Like, what would that look like?
I mean, I would be playing as one of the demons trying to figure out how to torture people.
I probably would too.
Yeah.
Like, it would be, but
like,
if not that, it would be like a sim.
I would need to
or something
design my
like
own
that.
place. Yeah.
Like, there's an implied violence to so many of our genres.
Oh yeah, I mean, like even sim games. Like, yes, there is Sim City, but like you're building a city. What you're not seeing is the homeless people who are dying freezing on the street.
Exactly.
I mean, that sounds like I'm either being flip or being a parody of myself. But like, if you examine it closely enough, like anything can have a violence attached to it. There is always going to be a victim to what you're doing.
Like totally. And like, so that makes me think that this complaint, like that there are too many violent video games, is the actual, so if the complaint is, it's not violence, is it genre? Mm-hmm. Is it the fact that the violence is shown?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it gore? Just like is it gore?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, most games I feel like are not gory.
Yeah, like, and also like if a game is gory, oftentimes there are toggles to turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I don't want to, so it's not I don't want to do violence,
mm-hmm.
and it's not I don't want to see violence. It feels like a grand frustration with just a limitation of the medium
mm-hmm.
that is slowly getting solved, and people are just kind of mad that it's not getting solved fast enough.
Yeah.
But I really do think that it's the thing you said where it feels like a catch-all. I want to complain about Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I don't like that this is a dominant form in the medium. How can I, complain about that?
Yeah. So something that has come up on Video Games Hot Dog every once in a while, like occasionally they will ask a question like, does this need to be violent? And it is not like bemoaning, and it's certainly not moralizing about it, but it's like, yeah, I was kind of put off by the theming of this. And something that they raised up, and I've made a little bit of hay myself, applying this, but like, what does a nonviolent version of this look like? An example they gave was Hitman. One of them got a little bit turned off by the violence in Hitman, I think, or just like, yeah, I wish I wasn't killing dudes. And I was like, okay, what if Hitman was about like secretly giving somebody a present to enliven their day? The mechanics were not changed at all. Like, you were still, trying to get through crowded places and, watching people's routines and stuff. But instead of poisoning their food, you were,
right, putting a Splenda in their food.
Yeah, you were slipping a crisp $20 bill into their coat pocket. Something like that. And I think that is more of a discussion that I see, especially from them as people who make games, but also like other people who are interested in the craft. Is it worth examining whether or not there is an alternative for a given game or a given genre, like how to theme this in a way that does not necessarily go directly toward that? I think that is an interesting conversation, because that is looking at how can we bring diversity of theme.
Sure.
But like, I don't know that is, I feel like that is separate and apart from like criticism and discourse in general, right?
It's also a question, like, I think that is an interesting thought experiment and stuff, but it's also a question that's predicated on an assumption that it is always something to avoid, like violence is always something to avoid.
Right.
Like that is a question that's predicated by the problem, like that. I haven't listened to that episode, but it's prompted by somebody being grossed out by the violence in Hitman.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like, yes, you could make a game that is mechanically similar or the same by slipping a Splenda into people's drinks and just slipping a $20 in their pocket. And then, but that has more effects than that then becomes a weird quirk. Like, if you map that onto genre, like that then becomes a quirky, like Zach Braff indie film or something about the snuggler, or something like that, as opposed to like being a pulp action thing about a hitman. And like, what I would say is, like, if the violence in that grosses you out, like I wonder how much of that is just the genre. Like, it doesn't feel cool to me to play a hitman. Like, that's not a cool thing to me. And if you were positioning yourself on the opposite side of like a Final Fantasy Battlefield against the idea of pulp genre, like that is just a really big fight.
Yeah.
That is a really big thing to position yourself against.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time relating to that.
Yeah.
Like it is an interest, does the violence need to be here is a cool question as a thought experiment and a way to get around it. And does the violence need to be this explicit? I think is actually a really good question.
Well, I mean,
and you should always ask.
That gets into Bioshock Infinite, right?
And Bioshock Infinite and Resident Evil 2, right? Like, then that is really like an excellent, or Alien Isolation, like an excellent question to ask. But just does it need to be violent at all? Could this instead be a Zach Braff Kickstarter indie movie about somebody who gives people $20 versus like anything else? Like that to me is, or like instead of thief, like instead of stealing from people, I'm giving them things. Like that just breaks the fiction. It becomes twee automatically when you start stripping like genre motivation from something, and not everything needs a hard and fast genre, but most things like map onto that, and it's just a big thing to position yourself against.
Yeah. Like thinking about like, even though Phoenix Wright is a really cute motion comic about quirky lawyers, it is still predicated on people dying in horrible ways. Yeah. Like, and would Phoenix Wright be as entertaining if you were like trying to figure out who took that $20 out of my pocket?
Yeah. If you made it not about solving murders and then about solving something like cuter or more twee.
Torts.
Yeah, torts. Like, would it still feel there's tons of knock-on effects. It reminds me of the like the thing that keeps coming up with getting rid of item placement. Like, oh, I don't want to have power-ups, and how that changes the entire reward structure and like reasons to explore and the like. This is one of those things too. Getting rid of, making Hitman a game about slipping people $20 would change a lot more than it seems like
it would remove conflict. Like, I think that gets to it. Like, what we get back to is it is still, video games, regardless of how complex they can get, and regardless of, the different things that we do, we still have the different conflicts that are available to us in media. Or in stories, and man versus person or man versus animal, the ways that those will manifest in noticeable ways in audio and video are, primarily through, do I make this thing stop moving? Like, it is still like an effective use of that media in a way that like man versus self would be hard to do. Just because something is hard doesn't mean it is not done or shouldn't be done, but like, is that using the medium in a way that it should be used, right?
And is it, I would never say you shouldn't make your slip somebody $20 man versus self game, but does that need to be held up as the good? Yeah. Like the goal and is the opposite of that, does that need to be held up as the thing to avoid? And that's the assumption that I see that I would question. Yeah. Like, and getting rid of conflict is, conflict is drama. Like just kind of getting rid of drama from a context. Even if the gameplay has drama, saying that the stakes of this or the story of this character or what he's doing cannot be dramatic. Yeah. Almost like it's supposedly, theoretically you could be slipping people $20 because otherwise their heat's going to get shut off or something. Yeah. And that's still a consequence of violence. Yep. If you fail at that point, like it really does, like a lot of things come down to whether our personhood, either physically or mentally or kind of our sustainability is threatened. Yeah. And that's kind of drama in general. And just seeking to Katamari everything is something I think is a little bit faulty, and no one specifically is saying, hey, Katamari everything. Right. No, but I mean it's worth looking at least a trend in the way that games are evaluated, and to ask or to notice, hey, y'all are rounding up kind of just by default in a way that doesn't seem to be especially well considered. Should we think about like how much we are rounding up and for what reason we're doing it? Yes. I just think it's an assumption that should be challenged. And like the thing that we touch on real quick though, that I think that is worth talking about is like whether ultra violence and gore is necessary. Yeah. I mean, just like, do you get into gratuity? Right. Yes. And like we talked about in Bioshock Infinite, why we thought in that game it is not well used. Right. in general. But I think that we both agree, and it took me a second to actually get to this. I had to consider the question. So like one, I would say, don't have like a default answer to this.
Right,
I mean,
right.
and do if you're just sensitive to it and you don't like looking at it, I mean, in a critical sense, like don't have a default answer to it.
Yeah. I'm like, if you have trauma in your life that causes you to react like that, understand we are not touching that with a 10-foot pole. We are coming at this strictly from our own protected and sheltered point of view.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that, or if you just don't like it.
Right.
I'm just saying when you look at it from a critical, you start saying what things ought to be as opposed to what you want to experience.
Yeah.
But like from a like kind of a critical perspective, like don't assume it's automatically bad. One of the things that we both, we talked about Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
Which is shockingly gory.
Yep.
Like this game is exceptionally gory, and it took me, I like wrestled with it. And like the two things I don't know whether I think are to good purpose is how often these characters are swearing and how gory it is.
Yeah.
And I came around on both of them. Like I think that both of those serve a purpose. I think the swearing is kind of funny and feels like the B movie side of Resident Evil is kind of back in a way, like that is done to kind of evoke that kind of silliness.
Yeah.
And that violence is just this being a grindhouse Italian horror genre thing in a way that they might, I watched the opening cutscene to Resident Evil 1 or when you first find the zombie Resident Evil 1 last night.
Yeah, a head fucking rolls across the floor.
Yeah, this was always supposed to be part of the kind of, again, going back to genre.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be a dirty, filthy, like 70s kind of genre horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's fine if you don't like that. But it's weird to just be like,
it's weird to walk into a horror movie and say, man, what's with all this blood?
Totally. And that's ultimately what a lot of this feels like to me.
Yeah.
Walk into a sci-fi action, walk into a Star Wars and like, why are these people shooting each other with lasers? I wish they would just make friends. And I'm like, it's not, it's Star Wars. It's wars. Wars in the title. It's, yeah. No. And, just I personally am not bothered enough by violence because I love horror games. There are also horror games that do a lot with very little gore. Like Echo Night Beyond is virtually bloodless, but it is still especially effective horror. I think that it just comes down to whether you're using it judiciously and for a reason. Like brutality is fine as long as it is not gratuitous. Right. Yep. Like just can it stand up to at least 3 Ys is what I want for pretty much anything in media, Yep. Yeah. I am on the same page about that. Yeah. And I also just want to throw a clarification. I'm not subtweeting anyone particularly. Like this is just a attitude that I've seen kind of in the discourse for years.
Yeah.
This is not, I don't want to make it feel like I'm calling out Video Games Hot Dog Dude specifically because they're extremely smart. Like,
right. And it's not like they blanket avoid any violent games. It is just something that comes up from time to time. And I think that for them, I won't speak for them, but as a fan of theirs, I think that they're just applying their mentality as designers and developers to the problem. Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of the piece I wanted to say about it or wanted to discuss about it.
Yeah. No, we got a lot of violent stuff coming up too. Like,
yep.
it doesn't especially bother me because it is done for a reason, and it does not directly contradict the themes in the way that it happens in Bioshock.
I'm watching with my girlfriend. I'm watching Deadwood.
Oh yeah,
again, which is a violent show, but I think that show actually uses its violence to a purpose as well. Like most of the things in that show are done for a like pretty good reason, and the violence in it, like I also will, and this people can think less of me if they want to based on this, but like I'm not above being thrilled by violence when it is used in that good context, or used in a reasonable context. Like the absolute super, the gory death things in Alien Isolation or the crazy violence in Resident Evil 2 do make me feel more viscerally the danger to my avatar.
Yeah.
And myself by extension. Like I actually get the positive about it too. Like I don't want to just frame it as something that's like, I definitely don't want to like it framed as something that is a problem to be solved. And I certainly don't, and even more so, I don't want it to be framed as an acceptable evil.
Right.
It's a tool, like it's another tool in the box.
Yeah.
and it can be used really, really well.
Yeah.
know?
That red is just a color that's in the palette.
Yep. And if it doesn't work for you, that's cool too.
Yeah.
When people talk about what ought to be as opposed to just kind of what works for them.
Yeah.
Is more what I'm rankling on.
Prescriptive versus descriptive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Let us read responses to the games.
Let's do about possibly the least violent game we've covered in a while, Super Mario 2. Let's start with that.
You kill like a lot of Shy Guys in this.
Yeah, but they mostly just end up falling off the screen. There's nothing that says there's not like a stuntman mat down there.
Yeah, like a bed, a mattress.
Just a gigantic marshmallow
down there.
Yeah.
It's really just, do you see the violence or is that you're doing it or what is the line? With this.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Birdo's eggs and throw them back in our faces. Those are ovum.
Yeah.
She
she was hoping desperately to just fling a light into the future, But
you don't know how many years Birdo's been waiting to have kids.
She's been trying so hard. So I'll get us started here with RGM Justice, who says, via contact, I remember always tensing up while making the run from a Phantom Mask, key in hand. I appreciate that you brought up the fear that it instilled in children of the era. It's nothing, though, compared to the white-knuckle terror that Birdgate mimic caused when it dislodged its disembodied head from the fucking wall. Even after defeating it, you still have to throw yourself into its gaping maw like some kind of vor fetishist. This was the real final boss.
I don't think we talked about it in the episode. I really do like that you have to still go through that gate.
It's pretty good, and I love that it's not connected to anything.
Yeah, you just kind of go through that game's fucking good.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yep. So Phantom Mask, the Angry Sun. I love the Angry Sun. I want to I've thought about commissioning the Angry Sun from the same wood sprite guys that do that.
Mm-hmm.
I love any unintentionally terrifying or intentionally terrifying thing in a Mario game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the piano from Mario 64.
Oh yeah,
that's really great.
That gigantic fucking eel.
Yep. Oh yeah. Jamie says via contact, Mario 2 is by far my favorite NES Mario, but this may be because it was my first Mario game, excluding Game & Watch. Indeed, it was the first game we bought, having been given the system, but with one game, Gumshoe. That is a bummer. Of course, I was only 7 or so and not a gamer yet. So when I encountered Birdo, I was stuck. I would play the first level, get to Birdo, surf on the eggs for a bit, and give up, and probably play some more Gumshoe. Of course, there were no YouTube videos to show me how to do it back then. When I first actually pressed the B button, it was incredible. I immediately called out to my sister, beat Birdo, and walked into the yawning chasm of the bird mouth to the adventure that awaited. So the fact that Mario 2 was more or less my gateway drug to years of gaming sense may have something to do with my affection for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
No,
it is we talked a little bit about some of that, like how the tutorializing in Mario 2 is not quite as elegant as the tutorializing in Mario 1. Mm-hmm. Just by virtue of having kind of more complicated verbs.
Yeah. It is a bit of a leap to think that, I can pick anything up, even something that is carrying me across the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that in real life.
Right. It doesn't stand to reason.
Yeah. If you're on a skateboard, you don't get to pick up that skateboard and put it onto something while you're on it.
I mean, that'd be a pretty cool trick.
It'd be an extremely cool trick. Right. Tony Hawk could do it.
Yeah. I mean, Tony Hawk can do anything.
He can. He's tall.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is Tony Hawk's Twitter, where he just posts stories about people who kind of recognize him but don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Michelle writes via contact, I got Super Mario Bros. 2 when I was 6 years old, and it was a hugely formative game for me. In the instruction manual, there are bios for all the enemies and bosses and stuff. The one for Birdo reads, he thinks he's a girl and spits eggs from his mouth. He'd rather be called Birdetta. This was, no kidding, when I first realized on some level that being trans was a thing. This made 6-year-old me question a lot of stuff. That, combined with the game allowing me to choose Peach as my character, got me thinking about how maybe I'd rather be a girl.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've read similar stories about that, or similar stories to this.
Yeah.
I think that's super cool.
Yeah. Representation's important. Or at the very least, it's powerful.
Even if it was initially like on accident, it can still have like far-reaching effects.
Yes.
Yeah. That is awesome. I know says via contact, during commuting to work, I play older games on the 3DS Virtual Console. I'm finding there's something particularly valuable about this activity. I don't have a smartphone, so the bus ride is a good opportunity to be bored and have nothing else to do. I feel like this emulates the circumstances for gaming back in the turn of the 80s and 90s. You had that one Nintendo game, so you were sticking with it. I found lots of joy from playing the original Metroid this way. You accept certain game design elements and even discover value in them, such as getting lost without a map. You could describe this as something like bad usability, but is an experience that good usability does not necessarily allow. Same goes for having limited lives and continues in Super Mario Bros. 2 and having to start over. A certain level of mastery over long stretches of the game is mandatory instead of an optional challenge. You'll have to have stamina to maintain your performance across several challenges rather than deal with each one in its own. Modern point of comparison, VVVVV. Well, of course, nothing really stops me from using the save state features on the Virtual Console. I did give myself unlimited continues for a while, but somehow I find playing the game as originally intended more enjoyable. So today I was listening to the Super Mario Bros. 2 episode while walking to the bus and playing the game during the bus ride. Good times.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is really hard to go back.
Yeah.
Force yourself to have limitations like that.
Yeah. Once you have quick load and quick save bound to the shoulder buttons on your 8-bit do NES Pro or whatever, it's really hard to give that up. And I sometimes worry that impacts my ability to speak about these games accurately to their, the way people might have experienced them.
Yeah.
Ultimately, It's more important for me to get through them, and I feel like I can probably at least extrapolate based on what's there from my experience of quick saving and quick loading, but it is a worry that I have sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And there are things that, I think the point that's really good in this is that, it can be considered bad usability, but it's also an experience that is unique.
Yes. It's an experience that if something good, it just doesn't allow. Just the idea that something being good might actually throw out some interesting, cool stuff by being
good is an exclusive choice a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes that stuff doesn't work for me. Like in Salt and Sanctuary, I could not handle not having a map.
Right.
In that game. I could, but it bothered me.
And that's why you're a fake Souls player.
I am a fake gamer boy in general, actually.
Yeah.
It's about time that I say it and admit it. So.
Oh.
Yeah. Didn't you hear how much I love violence and violent games and shooters? I'm extremely real.
Can't live without it.
Yeah, I can't be fake. I love them Call of Duties.
Yeah, like it,
Kill
love
me,
it, gotta
cities.
have it. Yeah. Oh man! Every time you buy a new coffee maker in The Sims, like a sweatshop child loses a finger.
Yep.
Think about it. Come on, systemic violence. There's no such thing as ethical games.
Nope.
Let's see here. Yeah, it sounds like a good experience, and one that I, just blocked myself out of. Being able to play games in isolation on a bus. Moving on to stuff from Pyre. Sam writes via contact, as far as I can remember, Pyre is the only game that made me tear up from the end credits. Also, while playing to win every game let me succeed in the overall storyline, it made me feel like an enormous bastard for screwing over people in a couple of side stories, which is something I wish was in every sports game.
There is, for a war to have a winner, there has to be a loser.
Yep.
Yeah. Somebody has to lose every war.
I'm kind of a monster who really enjoys, when I watch sports, the cutaways to the anguished fans on the losing team. Partly because I wish that I felt anything as strongly as they do.
Well, and there's such a big difference. These are people who are literally trying to get their freedom.
Yeah, that's true.
If somebody's sports team loses, I have exactly zero sympathy for you.
Right. Yeah.
Not just because it's sports either. It's the same, esports, anything that doesn't matter.
Right.
Things that don't matter don't matter. Right. So
yeah, that there are parts of that you're probably sad because you watched the Browns with your dad when you grew up, and the Browns winning would reaffirm that bond to you, even though your dad is gone, or especially because your dad is gone. There are intangible costs to it, I understand, but also it's super funny that you're crying in public.
Yeah. But ultimately too, your relationship with your dad is probably more than that. That would be nice,
Yeah.
But you can also think man, I would have been nice to think of, commiserate with my dad.
Yeah, that's true.
About this, it doesn't
ultimately the thing that matters is you and your dad, not the sports. So.
Yeah, not the Browns.
Right.
I know this is not what Sam is saying. Sam is not.
Yeah, no.
That's the thing about Pyre, and it's something I don't know how much we underline in the episode, but it does take that general feeling of sports ultra consequence and tie actual narrative context consequence to it.
Yeah.
which is interesting. Like sports are treated like they are in Pyre no matter what, but only in Pyre are they actually the difference between freedom and captivity.
Yes.
Until we eventually get to like the Running Man.
Right. Or Murder Ball. I'm led to understand by the name of that movie.
I think Murder Ball, the movie, is about
wheelchair. It's about people in wheelchairs playing basketball, but it's very fun to misapprehend what Murder Ball's about.
Yeah, it sounds like it's definitely about whoever gets dunked on really gets dunked.
Well, it sounds like you play it with a head.
Yeah, the head of the losing team.
Yep.
Or the head of the winning team.
Yeah.
From previous. Weird Autumn says via contact, I largely feel the same way about Pyre that you did. It's my least favorite Supergiant game, and the gameplay didn't really work for me, and the whole thing never quite came together the way I wanted. But I'm just a little bit more positive on it. I didn't get as fatigued by the rights, and I was more on board with learning about the other teams and seeing their little arcs. And I bought in a little bit more to the story in general. It was also one of the first games I played after coming out that let me pick my pronouns. And I just got a nice little affirming feeling every time Ruki called me sister. So that meant something to me as well. Anyway, I'm writing in to point out a couple of really nice small touches that you guys didn't address in the episode that I think are worth calling out. The voice is played once again by Logan Cunningham. He sounds nothing like Rux or like Blue/Breach/Transistor in this one, so I didn't realize it was him until after the credits, and I'm just impressed by his range. 2, you mentioned that they play the same song during every Ascension bout, Never to Return, but it's actually not quite the same song every time. Each team you fight has a different version of it that incorporates their own theme music and has a unique verse about them. You don't really notice it in game, but I still think it is cute. Yeah, cool details.
Yeah, didn't notice that. I knew that the voice was done by the Supergiant voice man kind of guy, and it's good. It's
Supergiant voice man.
Help him devise a ray. Devise a ray. It is impossible. Countries have declared war on him. He has to deal with their bombing sorties. Please shrink.
Sovereign nation.
Please shrink Supergiant Voice Man. He deserves dignity. He deserves a life.
No one knows my pain.
You crushed Boise. Fuck. Yeah, we didn't talk about that, but it is good. Like the game just says, the characters will refer to as if you are a male. Do you want to change that? Let's go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What does Matt have to say?
Matt has to say, I have a lot that I'd like to say about Pyre, but I will focus on the thing that always stands out to me about Supergiant games, the music. It was actually the soundtrack to Bastion that convinced me to play it, and I've loved their games ever since. I don't believe that Pyre has the best music in their games so far, but I feel it has the best use of music. The inclusion of the minstrel characters made a lot of the music feel as if it was diegetic in the game world. The constant acoustics made it feel like Tariq was playing us some traveling music where we went from right to right. Each liberation rite felt epic as the camera pans to the field. You see the two minstrels silhouetted above you, and they serenade the match with a song that changes depending on who was involved in the game below. Even the song that plays as you head into the final liberation rite, while kind of cheesy, dramatically changes how the moment feels. Also, I felt really bad that Big Bertrude's theme was the tuba music that plays when a fat guy walks around in a cartoon. I feel like the alchemist / naval mechanic / lady made of several snakes could get something a little cooler. Oh well.
I also think about fat guy tuba music a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you watch any measure of like even good reality TV, like the second somebody of carriage walks up, like just there's like, ooh, yeah. Just the tuba guy's real horny to like
real licking his lips.
Oh yeah, yep. Bend over. Give me
that sack butt. Sweating to the soup, my large lad.
Man. Yeah, I've been listening. It's just Spotify is so amazing for just listening to indie game soundtracks. Like, I just have those not blasting, but playing gently throughout my entire house. Oftentimes, yeah, it's good.
Eric says via contact, the lack of defensive options in Pyre sticks in my dang craw. While I didn't really need defense, it's not a very tough game, matches felt awfully haphazard. One of my dickheads crumpled around the court. My other two dickheads stood around the fire, waiting for the moment that they might become dickhead prime. This is a good response.
Yeah.
They become dickhead prime. Getting Wolfred changed that. Suddenly, it felt like I was playing a team with defend roles. Wolfred as goalie, Dordariel or Bertrude or Apamatha before I sent them off as banisher, and Che/Bay/Zay/ Born to Die / World as a Fuck as scorer. The game really started clicking for me then, so it's just wild to me that they wait until the last fourth of the game to add an explicitly defensive character. For me, Supergiant is still 3 for 3, but Pyre is by far the most qualified of those wins. I really enjoyed both the visual novel and rights portions, but can agree with most of the qualms you guys brought up. Weird pacing, no real interaction between the game's two disparate modes, weak expressions of themes, and Christ, those book pages were unbearable. I read all of them, admittedly skimming by the end, hoping that there'd be a payoff, that I would just get to the fireworks factory, but nope, Poochie just kept rapping. I'm glad Supergiant took a big, baffling swing with this game, and that so many people seem to love it, because I hope someone else runs with this idea. A version of this that works 100% instead of, let's say, 80% could really be something special.
I think about that a lot. I've thought about it since we recorded that episode. Like, I oftentimes think about the studios in terms of that studio's story, right? Like, just the arc that they went through as they made games, and just like, here's where they were at in this year. I just kind of racked my brain trying to think, like, is there a studio that made 3 games and had all of them be like equally good? Like even 2 for 3, is pretty great. What do you call a doctor who got a C? A doctor, or a medical student got a C, call him doctor, right? Like, just, so it's really hard for me to like even resent Pyre as like being a squandering of Supergiant's time, because they've still done good, in general.
Yeah, I still, it's still a company that whatever comes out, when Hades is out of beta.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to play it right away. And the only reason why I didn't play this right away when it came out was because I knew we'd do it for the show.
Yep.
And I have a lot of trust in them as a developer, even after this misstep. I think this is more of a misstep than an 80, than Eric does, but I still, they are not. It was at least an interesting one. Yeah. I think the only thing I would really disagree with this statement too is I don't really want someone else to take a different version of this. I think I've done this. Yeah. To me, this to me is enough. Like, this doesn't work. Like, this was a fun experiment. Let's not spend any more time on it and do something different, please.
Yeah. Yep. No. I'm going to move us on to the Bioshock Infinite responses. Take writes via contact. As an Asian American, I really liked the Hall of Heroes. The imagery is completely racist and gross, but also kind of a cool haunted house experience. But true to form, because that's the kind of crap that would show up in American comics in real life. I don't know if any thought went into it beyond Columbia is racist, but is something that tends to get swept into the hidden parts of history. I'm glad to see it up front in big video games like this. If I can fit a smaller anecdote in, I loved Infinite, and I thought it'd be cool to show my little sister and her friends how far modern video games have come. Check out this cool fair and this crazy old-timey times in this city in the clouds. And then a buzzsaw went right into a man's face, and I realized in horror that normal people weren't as desensitized to video game violence as I was. They pretty much lost interest in the game after that.
I've heard similar anecdotes to that. There's like I can't remember who it is, but there's like an IGN or a game journalist guy who said something very similar to that. Like, this is the game I want to show my friends, but I can't because it is so pointlessly violent.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing. The nice thing is, like, it's funny though, because this came out in 2013, and like Katamari was very extant at that point. Like, there has always been the video game to show your friends. Just kind of going back, I don't want to recap that entire discussion we had, but like, that's the kind of thing has always existed. Show your friends Harvest Moon. Yeah. Like, they're maybe not as graphically polished, but they do have that sense of like wonder and possibility that maybe you're looking for.
The game that the most of my friends got excited about when I got it was The Sims. They wanted to come over and fuck around or just watch the little people do stuff. Yep.
Yeah. Good. Paul says via contact, thanks so much for the fantastic Bimfinite episode. I'm a half hour in, and it's a real treat. listening, maybe we said stuff later. We should write it after we finish it. Like, don't like I hope this is still stands. Listening to the generalities discussion about the game being a corridor shooter, I realized that I actually came to this game when I played it in 2016 because I wanted a corridor shooter, something in the vein of Half-Life 2 and the Wolfenstein series. At that point, I hadn't gotten into immersive sims or RPGs, genres I now love. So what surprised me about Infinite after engaging with it in good faith for 8 hours is what a bad corridor shooter it is. Games like Half-Life 2 don't actually involve open exploration, but when done well, the maze end scene of the level will make you feel like you're discovering something on your own, and you shouldn't notice the rails you're nonetheless stuck on. In Infinite, all the exploration and power-up stuff, along with the signposting of your route through the level, just took me out of the sort of immersion I'd want from a corridor shooter. Not an immersive sim immersion, mind you, but the immersion of an intentionally crafted corridor. The weird effect of this is that I was even less convinced that Columbia City was a city than I was of the preposterous German towns in Return to Castle Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
Man, Return to Castle Wolfenstein.
It's been a while since I thought of that.
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah,
that's a good game.
Machine Head games.
Yeah, like, the multiplayer in that was really good.
Yeah, Wolfenstein is good. We have to do those Machine Head games at some point.
No.
Those are good.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point about Half-Life 2.
Yep.
Like Half-Life 2 does not feel like you are on rails in a corridor.
Yeah, like the disappointing thing about Bioshock Infinite is not just that it is a corridor shooter, even though that is disappointing. You know, the disappointing thing is that it's not good. I think, Paul hits it hard. Yeah. Yeah.
What's Dylan have to say?
Dylan says, I was thrilled to death to hear that you were covering Bioshock Infinite, a game that is among my favorite to critically dunk on. I remember buying into the immense hype of the release cycle and picking it up on day one based on my infatuation with the first game. Fast forward past hours of me pumping thousands of bullets into Ghost Mom, glazed over, asking myself, this has to be good, right? By the ending of the game, I had so wholly checked out that none of the navel-gazing quantum fuckery elicited a reaction from me. Yet, as time passed, I soured on the game in a new way, with almost every month that went by. Yes, I was thinking about the game constantly, but almost all in increasing revulsion. The longer from my moment of play, the less I like it, for reasons I'm sure you'll cover in the episode. My question to both of you is, has there ever been a game that soured like this in your memory? And if so, why?
Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah, thank you.
This is my prime example of something that has aged, the more I think about it, the worse it's aged. There are other things for sure.
Yep.
But this is definitely, this was my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
Something that aged, like milk.
Yeah.
To me.
I thought you were going to give another example. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm trying to think. There is another example. It's something that we've done on the show, but I'm trying to remember it now.
Yeah. I'll do mine. Grand Theft Auto 4. I played.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah. No, I loved Grand Theft Auto games. Still do. Like I played 5, and 5 has aged pretty well in my mind. Played, got 4 on the first day that it came out. Just kind of played it straight through. And then just overall, that game has a lot of missteps in it that I didn't quite feel so strongly at the time. But every passing day makes me reconsider it even more. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Specifically 4. Yeah. Yeah,
specifically 4. 3 was, or not 3, San Andreas was like that for me too. Where and that was a very early experience of me realizing partway through. I mean, it's not exactly the same thing, but realizing partway way through I don't actually like this.
Yeah.
And thinking I definitely did or had to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you can Emperor's New Close it. That guy's definitely not hanging brain right now.
Yeah, hanging brain. I can't think of, this is my go-to example. I can't think of another one, but I know I've said a bunch of times on the show, games that get worse the more you think of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually what I mean by that. When I say that, it's a game that I maybe liked on first blush, but then the more time that passed since I played it, the kind of ugh,
yeah,
worse it gets. And that's not just things rotting.
Mm-hmm.
Some things get better.
Oh yeah.
The longer since you play them.
Pathologic.
And something, Pathologic doesn't get worse the more I think about it.
Right.
The more I think about it, the neater it is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dylan. Doug says, by contact. Bioshock Infinite has lots of problems, and I'm sure they'll be litigated at length in the podcast and the feedback. That being the case, I want to highlight some positive aspects of the game. Most importantly, it's a game that has big ideas and swings for the fences on them. Even if they don't all connect, I'd much rather have an imperfect game with huge ambitions than a perfect execution of something generic. Second, the retro covers are an unqualified win. For anyone who likes them, I recommend checking out Postmodern Jukebox, which we talked about that in the main episode. But check that out. You can get your fill with none of that skyhooking or quantum racism. Quantum racism.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I agree on the second point. I don't agree on the first one. I think that like there are interesting failures, but this crosses the line from like it didn't achieve its goals to like the actual conclusions you could take from this are harmful. I don't think this is a harmless game. I think I'm glad they made big swings can only like that applies to Pyre. Pyre is a game that I don't think is very good, but is harmless. This isn't harmless. Like it is a harmful posture that this puts forward, and in definitely the racial stuff which we talked about. But the thing that I'm really grateful about doing the episode that you and I kind of like I didn't come into this thinking about, but we kind of landed on together in talking about the episode is the cynicism about someone being permanently damned and how it does not matter if you change or it does not matter if you change your mind or try to do good. You can just be a rotten person to the core across all dimensions.
Like
that's vile.
It offends me almost in a religious way as a humanist. Like just that I think that is such a terrible thing to put forward. So I would love it to be neutral, and I would probably feel the same way, but it doesn't feel neutral to me. So. Like I was really happy I took a big swing. Yeah, that baseball sure hit that person right in the face. Yeah, no, he's just a mailman. Like he wasn't doing anything.
What does Michael have to say?
Michael says, I played Bioshock Infinite for the first time in the lead up to your episode on it, and went in knowing a lot of the reputation and discourse on the game without having actually played it. I braced myself to hate the story, and I ended up thinking it was shallow and contrived. It fell flat for me on nearly every level, and I don't understand the positive reception at the time at all. What I was surprised about was that the gameplay fell equally flat. I was expecting a gameplay experience similar to the first two games, but maybe with some new wrinkles due to the fact that the city was in the air rather than under the sea. But in reality, the gameplay is made more shallow and you are literally put on rails. There are limited opportunities for exploration and experimentation as the game seems designed to push you from one set piece to the next as quickly as possible. Also, Elizabeth is supposed to be endearing, and I think you are meant to feel some sort of paternal connection to her. But to me, she just seemed like an embodiment of the developer's desire to keep you moving and from thinking about what you are doing too much. She's a distraction from the fact that the game isn't actually that good, and watching her dance around and throw ammo at you is supposed to somehow make you feel better about the fact that you just spent $60 on a turd.
Yeah, I don't know if Elizabeth is that so much, but I would agree like with the general conclusion.
Yeah. I think it's worth thinking about, is this element put here by the developer to make me not think about things they don't want me to think about?
She's just so like central to the story. And stuff. Like I think that what had happened was she originally was going to be something that had a little more friction to her, or was going to be more entwined in the play, and instead they made her a power-up. Because it's more like they overcorrected from wanting it to be an escort mission. Like they made her so fluff the player in gameplay ways because they didn't want to, may have her be a burden because that would ruin the plot. But they overcorrected. I don't think that they set out to or thought they were making a shitty shooter. I think it just kind of happened because it was a 10-year development, or however many year like development cycle without a clear goal in mind for the whole thing. So
Yep. I'm happy that people like most of the responses on this have been about the mechanical shortfalls.
Yeah, which I like too, because it is, again, like we covered, but also people everywhere have covered the kind of quantum racists part of it, which is important. But John says via contact, I was absolutely thrilled to find out you guys were going to be covering Bioshock Infinite this month, and had to write in with my admittedly complicated thoughts on the title. Aside from Metal Gear Solid 2,
that's the one that has gotten worse for you, right?
Oh, that is something that has actually gotten worse.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's definitely one of them, but it is something that like on revisit, I was like, man, like there's neat things this does.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
the things that are neat and super unique, and the things that it doesn't do are just like myriad.
I didn't mean to stop
Legion.
you.
No, that's a great example. Like that's one too. Aside from Metal Gear Solid 2, Infinite is far and away my most anticipated game of all time. Ever since the reveal in 2010, I sucked up every detail about that game that was available, and with each trailer, could kind of track the gradual evolution of the game as it moved from the bonkers E3 2011 demo to the product we eventually got, which was not what I was expecting, to say the least. At first, I think that it was the linearity that bothered me. Aside from backtracking to loot the occasional house or store, it felt like the path that they needed you, felt like they had a path they needed you to stay on. The linearity killed me even more when you find out that the couple of choices they do give you, throw the ball or don't, cage or bird brooch for Liz, don't even fucking matter in the grand scheme of things, aside from a different item received later in the story. I know that feels similar to the lack of real consequence for killing/saving little sisters in the original, but given the theme of alternate realities here, it felt like a missed opportunity. What really conflicts me, though, is that this is far and away my favorite art direction of any game. Columbia is fucking gorgeous, and I still use screenshots of various locations as backgrounds on my phone/laptop. Lastly, I think it's really interesting to look back on the development of Infinite through the lens of 2019 with 100-hour weeks at Rockstar, layoffs at Activision/Blizzard yesterday, and the push for unionization of developer staffs. I know we've had a few tell-all stories about how difficult Ken was to work with, on both titles no less, but what's really made me think is with the drastic changes from the demo to the finished product, with having to bring Rod Ferguson in to get the fucking thing out the door, and all the other things that led to Irrational's closure, was this is the canary in the coal mine as far as the sustainability of AAA development, as far as life versus crunch, concept to reality, and maintaining a creative vision from conception to release. I'm sure there are many other examples, but this is the first one that comes to mind, probably because of its relatively public troubled development.
Yeah.
Yeah, good response.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I like early on before we get to that last point is that I think it is like it's not a missed opportunity that alternate realities are the same thing. I think that's the premise of the game.
Yeah.
And that sucks. Like you're right to rankle against that, but I don't think it's, I understand thinking that has to be a missed opportunity because surely they're not making a point about how you're the same no matter what you do. But I think that is the point they're trying to make.
Yeah.
So that is a big bummer.
Yeah.
But good observation. Your gut is right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that last bit is pretty cool too. That's interesting. I would have to think about that a little bit more if I think it is to think if it's really the first one, but it is an early example of that.
Yeah. It's not the case that miserable people always make miserable games. See The Witcher 3. But if you are mismanaging the game to the point where people are overworked and miserable, there's probably a bunch of other stuff that is mismanaged and can lead to this kind of fucked up, half done but overbaked thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Poor working conditions can be a canary in the coal mine for things that will lead to a worse final product. So, even if you don't care about the quality of devs' lives, which, I would argue that you should.
I'll do more than argue it.
Yeah.
I
would say, yes, you absolutely should care about the quality of the lives of, people in general. But also, if you care about the thing that comes out the other end, wish for better management.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
It is ultimately going to make better games.
Yeah.
If people are that. And we don't know the full story of this. And this was before kind of layoffs got attention. It's actually ultimately a very good thing that these layoffs are in the news so often because they weren't not happening.
Right. Yeah.
Before. It's similar to the police summarily executing black people constantly is that wasn't not happening before.
Right.
It's just now there's cell phone cameras and there's news about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if a game company does big layoffs, there are people making a stink and is this just, is this right?
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big
yeah, it is
a big step forward.
It is worth questioning and it is worth agitating about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Thanks everybody.
Thank you
for your responses. If you have responses about Papers, Please, Frostpunk, or Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl, hit us up at duckfeed.tv/contact.
Yes. By March the 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Hit us up by April the 15th if you want to talk about the games we're playing in April, which we will announce now.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you grab that one because I have all of our future months mixed up in a
I,
quantum storm.
I got you, fam. The first game we are covering is Spec Ops: The Line.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's a spicy one. It's something we've talked about a lot, and use an example, and it feels good to actually just finally give it the treatment.
Yes.
And you'll know what we're talking about.
So yeah, I'm excited to go back to that. I revisited on Hexcrank a while back. Still a fun game, good to play. Love the music in it as well. Yeah.
I am there to get just ravaged by decisions. I want to watch my pristine jarhead idiot turn into a ragged, bleeding
demon,
barely coherent demon.
Yep.
Over the course of 6 hours. So
yep. Let's see here. The second game is going to be a first for us, a big series that we haven't talked about very much or at all. We're doing a game called Halo 3 ODST. Yeah.
I've never played a Halo. It is my first Halo.
Yeah. This is a patron selection from Bradley. And this is definitely the weirdest Halo game. But also one that I think will benefit from our approach because it is like a collection of short stories. Like you are not playing as the same person throughout all of this. You're like jumping around to different conflicts in the same war.
Yeah, I'm interested in it. It'll be interesting to go into it as a Halo novice. I'm going to find like a 5-minute, the story so far, Halo explainer.
Oh, get ready for nouns. Get ready for nouns, my friend.
I love nouns, man. Nouns. There's a whole thing about how Cortana sucks him off in the suit, right? Like,
yeah, I guess.
Like there's something like that. I don't know very much about Halo, but I think that's true.
Yeah, definitely true.
Yeah, there's something to that. So I want to learn more about that and see like what the mechanics are. Like, do you tap X to like get a rhythm? Is it like really getting sucked off where you want it to be kind of wild and erratic at first, but then eventually turn to a steady pressure? Do you have to do that with the buttons? Is it analog?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to figuring that out.
Is there machine learning applied? Like, does she? I mean,
Is there aim assist? Like, I need to figure out what the jerking off Master Chief through the suit as Cortana mechanics are. And I think this is a really bold choice.
Yeah. Well, also you don't play as Master Chief in this game.
So. Oh, okay. You just play as Cortana sucking him off.
Right.
So, right. I don't know what OT. Figure it's like orgasm something total or something like that.
It's like orbital drop shock troops or something like that.
Yeah. The only part of this I'm not looking forward to is digging out my Xbox 360.
Yeah, it's gonna suck.
But I'll do it for the fans.
Yep. And then the final game that we are talking about, the premium episode for this, is going to be, I mean, like we've talked about it quite a bit, but we just need to do it, and people have surmised that we're going to do it. Resident Evil 2 2019 edition.
RE2 make.
Yep.
It is just part of it is just like, hey, we both have been playing it a lot, and part of it is just we have a lot of things to say about it.
Yeah.
It just we really want to hit it up, and it is interesting from a Watch Out for Fireballs perspective because we covered Resident Evil 2.
Yes.
So we will be it will be a really interesting companion episode to that one.
That one from 6 years ago.
Yeah, quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So we were due for a remake as well. This is not us, starting to do redo things quite yet. But this is just something we both have a lot of things to say about.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful game. It is definitely my favorite. It is early contender for game of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I know that I'm going to play it again, even though I've played the game 4 times already.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to play it again myself.
Yeah.
If you end up playing it again, something that I did my B game is easy because I knew I was going to play it again for the show.
Yeah.
Give easy mode a try because it is easier. Like you don't get that tension, right? But it turns it into like a fun shooter.
Yeah.
Like if you have ammo to kill every zombie, it becomes something closer to a Resident Evil 6 or Resident Evil 4 kind of thing, as opposed to, and it's pretty fun. Like the shooting in this is fun.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to engage with it willy nilly as opposed to every bullet being a precious angel.
Yes.
I
might do that.
There's neat different ways to experience it for sure. And that is April. Yep. Also in April, we will be in Milwaukee on the weekend of April 12th for the Midwest Gaming Classic, talking about games that allow you to make art.
Yes. So think Mario Paint, think MTV Music Generator, etc.
Yep, Mario Maker. We're going to be talking a little bit about kind of that whole thing. It will be a survey course, of course, But come see us, and we'll also be tabling all weekend.
Yeah.
Come check us out.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to approach us and say hi. Maybe
Not remotely.
Yes. Maybe go for a hug. No, I'll hug you. I won't hug you across the table. That's awkward, but
I would recommend at least doing, if you don't have to explicitly ask to go in for a hug, but you have to kind of do the thing where you hold your arms out a little bit and make that face.
Yeah.
And then just kind of read the room.
Yes.
That's what I would ask of you.
Yeah.
I think that's probably about it.
Think so. Patronize us, please. Thank you to everybody who has done that at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we really, really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
And ratings, reviews are also very useful. And that's about it.
I think so.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And until next time, good night.
Good night.